What's up everybody? Skylar the ADHDM here. Today I'm going to use a bullet journal to prep the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, a campaign that I'm actually running. Addressing a couple things first, why use a bullet journal? I can only speak from my own experience when I say that most game prep really tends to get away from me notes-wise. Even on computers, I tend to lose track of things. Like I'll name something Untitled 4 and be like, yeah, I'll remember what that's called and be able to find it and know that this tribe of hobgoblins is in that note. Or I'll make a note called cooking, and somehow in that note I've spiraled into the constellations of my D&D world. And to avoid that sort of disorganization and confusion that seems to be inherent with how my brain dumps out information, I like using a bullet journal to prep my games. So first things first, we do need to number our pages. I've done that before the video because it does not make for great viewing. Some fancy bullet journals come with pre-numbered pages. I'm a cheapskate. This one is from a hobby supply store. I think it cost $5 or $6. I've also picked up some index cards, some stencils, and some envelopes. You don't need any of this. Now that we've numbered our pages, I'm going to take a look at the characters in this campaign. I've got them loaded up here on D&D Beyond. That's just easiest for all of us to use. And I'm going to copy down these characters, put them in an envelope, and keep them in the front of the journal. I don't need everything on these character sheets, right? And just copy down the information that I need to know at a glance. Now I'm opting for index cards over something like making character spreads, which is something that you'll see in a lot of campaign journals, and here's why. When you're using index cards, A, you can take those index cards and look at them while you're looking at another page of the journal, right? B, sometimes you don't allot enough space in character spreads. Sometimes you allot too much space. The number of characters in a party is not exactly a concrete thing, right? It's kind of fluid. It can go up and down as all our availabilities change, as people move away, or as you convince someone new to join the group. So for that reason, I just like using index cards and keeping them in an envelope at the front of the journal. Let's copy down some characters. So I know from reading a little bit ahead on this adventure that it has pretty distinct sections. We have the Witchlight Carnival, hither, thither, and yon. So I know basically my journal is going to be divided into those 4 sections. Bullet journaling uses a tiered system of spreads. Typically you'll have quarterly or monthly, weekly, and then daily, right? So how can we apply that to a D&D campaign? There are a lot of different ways to do it. Jenny D has some good ways that she's broken it down. SJ over at Journals and Dragons has some good ways that she's broken it down. Definitely find the way that you like using the most and toss out what you don't need. My way is I've got a campaign spread, I've got a weekly prep spread, and then I've got a spread for a given session. So there's only going to be 1 campaign spread per campaign, obviously. Maybe it's 2 pages, maybe it's 4. For this one, instead of the weekly prep, I'm probably going to do a spread for hither, thither, yon, and then the Witchlight Carnival. Now, I've already run the Witchlight Carnival for this session, but I'm going to put it in the journal just for the sake of consistency. And I'll transfer any notes that I have from running that session over to this spread. So if we turn over here to our table of contents in the journal, not all journals have built-in tables of contents. This one does, which is one of the things that I like about it. So let's say pages 2 and 3 are going to be our campaign spread. Maybe I will use this journal for multiple campaigns because it's a pretty big journal. So I'm not going to plot out everything just yet. Probably put hither, thither, and yon on 2-page spreads after that. In order to keep things spoiler-free for my Wild Beyond the Witchlight players, I'm gonna just go through the prep for the Witchlight Carnival. One cool thing that Wild Beyond the Witchlight has is NPC cards, and I'm gonna use those to make shorthand references for the NPCs in my spreads for that section of the campaign. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you may be familiar with my one-page campaign tracker. That's what I use to keep my campaigns on track in a really compact way, and I'm gonna use some of that same information here. Let's start with some pencil, just in case we make some mistakes. Carnival. Hither. Thither. Yawn. And the Palace of Heart's Desire. What information do we want to know about these places at a glance? Well, I want to know who the villains are, right? Or at least who's in charge of those places. Inside of Prismeer, I think is the name of the realm. Inside of Prismeer, it is hags who are in charge, right? Inside the carnival, it's Mr. Witch and Mr. Light who are in charge. So I'm just going to get that information at a glance. I also know something was stolen from each of the characters, and which part of Prismeer those are stored in and kept in is important information for me to have at a glance as well. Here we have Mr. Witch, Mr. Light, here we have Bavalorna or Balvorna. Let me go back and see. And this sort of flipping back and forth, right, that I'm doing to get to all the information I need, this is what we're Bavalorna. This is what we're going to avoid by keeping this information in the journal. Scabatha. And Indolin Moongrave, okay. And at the palace, we do have Zyblina, who's technically running things, but she is currently indisposed. So, what are these? The League of Malevolence. It's going to be our other villains there. I'm gonna write here. The numbers 8 and 3 are very important. Okay, let's see what other information we need that's in our running this adventure section, right? Most of it is about the maps. The story tracker. Story tracker sounds like an incredibly valuable thing to turn into spreads. Yeah, okay, this is gonna be rad for our purposes. So, things that we need to know are our unicorn horn location. Let's go ahead and use stencils for these because it's fun. I like using dot grid, but if you like using aligned paper or plain old grid, then more power to you. There are no hex grid bullet journals that I've ever seen, but I'm way into hexagons, so I'd love to see them if they exist. 8 lines ought to do it. I don't think we'll have more then 8 player characters throughout the course of this. Some people don't need index cards to draw straight lines. I am not one of those people. Lost things. Little arrow right here and say unicorn, not Unicron. Unicorn, horn, location, character, what they've lost, and the location. Item is a loose, a loose word here. It's not actually an item that anyone's lost. It's things like a sense of humor, sense of fashion, ability to tie knots, right? I'm just gonna make a broader section for notes. Notes. I always like to leave a notes section in every spread just to jot down things that I didn't think of. Story tracker. Also, over here, as the campaign goes on, any notes I need to make about Mr. Witch, Mr. Light, Bavlorna, Scabatha, Indolent, or Zyblina at a glance, I can just jot down over here. I've left a couple lines under each. Okay, according to our handy dandy table of contents, pages 4 and 5 are going to be for the Witchlight Carnival. That's carnival-y. It's appropriate, I like it. I got a comment. My favorite comment I've ever gotten on a journaling video that was like, hey, I used to think you had to do bullet journals really pretty. Then I saw yours and the pressure's off. I was like, wow, what a nice backhanded compliment. But I really did enjoy it, I think, because taking the pressure off of DMing is part of what I want to do, right? That's part of my mission. So I don't mind people saying like, wow, your style's so rough, and it makes me feel like I can do it too. I really enjoy that. Witchlight Carnival. So all that our story tracker has for the Witchlight Carnival is locations and events. So we'll take a closer look at the locations in the Witchlight Carnival. Starting with our role-playing cards, actually. Witchlight, hither, thither, yon, Prismeer. And that's perfect. So we can actually make our NPC cards and stick these in the journal, just like we did in the front here. It's gonna get kind of chunky, right? But that's what this band is for. Lots of bullet journals have that sort of scrapbook-esque heft to them. So I'm gonna grab some more index cards. So I am gonna write down their information at a glance. Then I will fill out their cards. NPCs in the Witchlight Carnival. We have stampeding herd of cats. I'm going, bye-bye. I'm gonna get put up. Fucking snarl all you want. Burley the Bugbear. Got a nice loud conversation happening outside. That's really good for audio. Candlefoot the Mime. He's a fun one. Now, why are we putting a character index and the character cards? Being able to see these characters at a glance and then having their details at hand on the cards is going to be really helpful. Because maybe I don't know where a character originates in Prismeer, and so I want to be able to flip to a section and you can see the NPC index and look them up. Dear Legrand, the Displacer Beast. Some of these names are... I feel like no one reads them out loud. Kettlestein the Kenku, very important character. At first. Mr. Light. Mr. Witch. Northwind. The Treant Sapling. Palasha the Mermaid, Sowpig the Ghoul, one of the Hag's minions, and I'm going to go ahead and write in parentheses thither to show where I'm going to actually put their card, because that's where they're going to show up more. Thaco the Clown. Thaco the Clown is what everyone will call you if you gatekeep the newer editions of Dungeons & Dragons. We are going to use an index card inside the envelope to measure the space that we need to allocate for that, but we won't attach it just yet. That way, we can have a little section for notes over here. And now I've got this whole big section to use for whatever we want. So this is kind of going to serve as a template for the rest of our location spreads, section spreads, I guess. So we've got this big space down here under our NPC index. So what are we going to use that for? I'm thinking probably whatever sections are divided up in our table of contents for the adventure, so we can record some information at a glance, and anything more specific can go in those spreads when we actually run those sessions. Back to our table of contents for the Witchlight Carnival. So the carnival has something called a mood tracker. I think we're actually going to put that on the session spread, since we'll be using that during the session. But the Witchlight Carnival itself might take a few sit-down sessions of play. So throughout the course of the Witchlight Carnival, players will earn things that come into play later on, like certain talents. So I think we're going to use this section to track those. That way we don't have to revert back to a specific session. We'll just call this section Consequences. Consequences and treasure. We'll also track treasure here. So basically, anything that the players might incur socially or mechanically, and any loot that they might earn is going to be in this consequences and treasure tracker. All we have to do is fill in the information from the book that we might need, and this is ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and throw this envelope in there. And since those are already laid out in the back of the book, it's as simple as copying those down. You can print them off if you want. I do like copying them down so that I retain the information a little bit from the act of writing down. Okay, flipping back to our table of contents, we know that until page 13, we have location spreads. So our first played session spread is probably going to be on page 14 and 15. You might even make up session 0 spread if you want. It's up to you. So what kind of information would you want to track in a session spread, right? What sort of information do you need as you're prepping for that session and as you're playing that session? When I'm running, at least, I break it up into encounters. There's the encounters and the connective tissue between encounters. That's sort of how the system assumes you're going to run the game, whether your encounter is a skill challenge, combat, some other social thing with build-up tension and resolution, right? Like the time between resolution and the build-up to the next tension is the connective tissue between your encounters, and everything else is an encounter. Things that your players will spend resources or roll dice to overcome. And I've seen some DMs get as specific as making encounter spreads, and if that's something that helps you prep the game, then go for it, but it does use a lot of paper. So let's head over to page 14, and we know that we are going to run some carnival games, and let's give our session a title. Session 1, the carnival begins. So there's not really going to be any combat in this carnival. It's mostly mini games that rely on skills or luck, or I guess skills are luck in D&D because you're rolling dice, but it's modified luck. I like making a session flowchart. Luckily, we have some very good stencils for this. Let's go. Playing it fast and loose with the stencils here. Okay, so our first beat is going to be entering / purchasing ticket. Players will have tickets ready for them. Next beat is going to be carnival games. in which the players simply play games at the carnival. It's fun, it's low stakes, it's wacky, and it does have consequences for later in the campaign. Kettle steams plan, and entering hither. Entering Prismere, we'll call it. So these are the beats that I know are going to be in the session no matter what choices the players make. Over here, for the rest of our session spread, I'm going to have this open during the course of gameplay. So I want to have a place to track combat relevant stuff like initiative or monster hit points. I'm also going to use some sticky notes if I need any stat blocks, which I don't on this one. But I would, for instance, say in Hither, Thither, Yon, and the Palace of Heart's Desire. The Wild Beyond the Witchlight is a little bit unique in that you might not ever need a monster stat block, really. For the most part, with a few exceptions, there are non-combat solutions to problems. We are going to cut this page in half. Not literally cut, but we're just going to draw a line from left to right. Down here, going to use more of our lovely banners. Down here, we're going to have scratch space. And up here, I'm going to write summary notes. And the summary won't be what I expect to happen. It'll be what actually happens throughout the course of play, which, as you know, those can be two wildly different things. Okay, so to review. We made our character cards. We numbered our pages. We made a table of contents, including our campaign spread, location spreads for each section of the gamebook, and our first session spread. Our campaign spread has all of our locations, important characters in those locations, important notes about the campaign, our story tracker, a section for scratch notes. Our first location spread has a space for scratch notes, a place for consequences and treasure, a character index, and all of our NPC cards for that location. Our other locations spreads are blank for the moment because we don't need them yet. The characters haven't gone there. Our first session spread, The Carnival Begins, has a flowchart of how we expect the adventure to go, a section for summary of how the adventure is actually going to go, and scratch notes for things like tracking HP, initiative, skill challenges, things like that. All the stuff that you need to scribble down throughout the course of your D&D adventure. And with that, our journal is ready for play. Maybe you want to go into more detail. Maybe you want even less detail than that and you need a broader overview. You can still take different notes. You can have your big GM binder, but hopefully this will be all that you need at the table. Thank you so much for watching. My journaling videos tend to be more popular than my non-journaling videos, and a lot of those views come from people who are not subscribed, but I am trying to get more journaling videos on the channel, so if you subscribe, you'll see more. Thank you to my patrons. If you want to come hang out with me while I journal on Twitch, you can catch me at twitch.tv/the_ADHDM, and I'll see you next time.